calls being made. In this instance, 4 weeks before the shooting, when he was trying to buy the ammo, the body armor, he was making calls in Arabic. Again, clearly suggesting a wider plot. But they don't even want to entertain the notion that there's a wider Islamist plot because it would shift the narrative further away from gun control. You know, in Molenbeek, Belgium, in Brussels, you can get a military-grade weapon on the streets in hours for €400. They had no problem acquiring military-style weapons in Paris to carry out that massacre, which, of course, is one of the strictest gun control regulation places in Europe. So again, this is not about gun control. They've tried to strong-arm that narrative into it. But if it came out that there were more shooters, that there were accomplices, which a lot of credible people are saying, that would demolish their narrative to an even greater degree. We've also got censorship in the aftermath of Orlando. Facebook bans gay magazine critical of Islam. This is out of Breitbart. Facebook has banned the page of gay magazine GayStream after they published an article critical of Islam in the wake of the Orlando massacre. Well, how dare they? And all they did basically was criticize this Green Party individual out of Germany who said that he was more afraid of white Germans than Muslims. Now, last time I checked, white Germans don't get together and have huge conferences and all agree that gay people should be put in prison or killed, but maybe they do. Maybe I haven't seen those conferences. So all this gay magazine did was criticize this politician for making those comments. It was immediately banned on Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg wasn't having any of it. And then we have this, again out of Breitbart. Reddit will adjust algorithm to censor Trump supporters following Orlando shootings. So basically, the Donald Reddit, which I did an AMA on a couple of weeks ago, Alex did one a few days ago, they were completely dominating the front page of Reddit because people are sick to the back teeth of being censored. So in the name of fairness, in the name of what they said was diversity, they simply changed their algorithm to relegate the Donald's content. This is a subreddit. And they relegated people making comments about the Orlando shooting, saying that the guy was a Muslim. That was deemed speculative. Those comments were relegated. In some cases, people had their accounts terminated. Again, this is the key time right after these shootings. I'm going to go on to talk about it with Brexit and this Joe Cox killing. The immediate aftermath of the shootings is when the narrative is formed. And it's very difficult to change that narrative afterwards, even if the facts are completely on your side, which is why they're so intent on censorship in the immediate aftermath of any of these kind of mass shooting events. We'll be back to talk about Brexit.
There's a new spin demonizing Donald Trump. Vanity Fair and hundreds of other publications are saying Trump really ran for president. That is, they're implying he ran for president to garner a giant database of populist supporters, to launch a media empire on cable television that would rival or even dominate Fox News. But if you actually read what Trump is saying, he's just sick of going on Fox and CNN and seeing him make tens of millions of dollars per debate or event while they badmouth him. And he is talking about launching his own type of media system to deliver news during the election. Some are saying, hey, that violates campaign finance laws. Well, foreign corporations and the Saudis own much of Twitter and Fox News. Why couldn't Donald Trump, with his own money, set up his own media system? Then it would be people democratically deciding to tune in to decide whether or not it was successful. Look, they call for campaign finance reform all day long, but it's only because the establishment thinks they have it all sewn up. They're scared of a dark horse like a Donald Trump coming in with his own money and launching a brand of nationalist populism that they can't compete with. They're dying. They're falling apart. Donald Trump sees a vacuum. So does Infowars.com. And into that vacuum, we simply hope to breathe a breath of fresh air into our free republic and the world, because we have goodwill for humanity. And we also want to see America succeed and be successful. But before America can be great again, America must be free again. Find the links to the live transmission The resistance is in full swing. The counter-revolution is live at Infowars.com because there's a war on for your mind. One more important item to cover on this live Friday show is that Media Matters, openly run by the Clintons and the White House, says that MSNBC panel rips Donald Trump's racist insinuation that Obama supports terrorism. Ladies and gentlemen, it's admitted that Obama has funded ISIS and Al-Qaeda. It's been declassified. It's all over the news. Cy Hirsch, Pulitzer Prize winner, has talked about it. Now, when they got embarrassed by it, they changed the name from Al-Qaeda to ISIS about 3 years ago. But this is what's going on. This is happening. And they use a word like racist. They said if you read the Obamacare bill, how it gave fines and fees to people that didn't give it, you were racist in making it up. Or that if you said it didn't cut your premiums to zero, you were a liar. Of course, it came out that it did increase premiums and wouldn't let you keep your doctor and did put fines on you. But in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And as long as the public's ignorant, these predators can continue to lie to the people. It's truly sickening. All right, back to the live transmission with Paul Watson, David Knight, and the InfoWar.
We are back. It's the Alex Jones Show live, now being joined by David Knight, of course, to discuss this incident yesterday, which was the Labour MP Jo Cox, again, tragically murdered in the north of England. She was a pro-Remain campaigner. She was campaigning for the side that wants to remain in the European Union. And again, this didn't happen in a vacuum. You look at the polls. Vote Leave was ahead. The polls were showing, in some cases, 19 points ahead. More recent polls show 4 to 7 points ahead. But they swung it around completely. Before that, the Vote Remain camp was ahead. Again, why is this important? Because it will deal a massive blow to the entire globalist agenda. This is part of the populist revolution sweeping the West. It's not only happening in America with Trump, it's happening in Europe with the rise of all these conservative parties. So this vote next week on the 23rd is a huge, huge deal. This could set their agenda back decades. So obviously they have an interest to exploit whatever circumstances possible to try and desperately rescue this situation. Now, if you're losing the debate, if you're losing the argument on immigration, on the economy, on sovereignty, as it applies to the European Union, then what do? Well, you exploit the tragic murder of someone to make political grist. That's exactly what they've done. I'm going to get more into the details and the latest in a moment. But David Knight, what's your take on this Jo Cox murder?
You know, you're absolutely right, Paul. This is an issue that is of international importance because our election here in the United States is one really that boils down to globalism versus nationalism. We're going to lose any chance that we have of restoring individual liberty if power gets more and more consolidated. And of course, if Britain will leave the European Union, then one of these major blocks of consolidation, the European Union, towards global governance starts to unravel. And we've seen efforts, as you mentioned, throughout Europe, different areas talking about the same type of thing. So this could create momentum, and they did have momentum, and now it looks like that may get lost. This happens exactly 1 week before the election. And I think, Paul, there may be something more to this than just saying, using this for their own purposes. Now, the Wall Street Journal reports the killing of Jo Cox silences both sides ahead of the UK vote on EU membership. They're going to have a massive memorial service for her on Monday, but it hasn't really silenced them, Paul. We've got Prime Minister Cameron, who, as you know, has been pushing for them to remain in the European Union. He said today, our nation is rightly shocked where we see hatred, where we see division, where we see intolerance. We must drive it from our politics and out of our public life and out of our communities. You say they were losing, and as you pointed out, Paul, you know, they came up with a new strategy. What is that? Wait for it. Racism. That's what Alex Jones is just talking about. And so what they do is they create a narrative where the Remain people, where the European Union, where the globalists are just peaceful and inclusive. But the other people who want to have the right of self-government, they're just racist and violent. We've had David Cameron making all kinds of desperate claims that there was going to be a physical war in Europe if Britain got out of the European Union. He said there was going to be economic disaster inside of Britain. He also said you're going to see interest rates go up. I mean, he's had this project of fear, and if you look at the way the media is reporting this, Paul, it's not just the Wall Street Journal saying that it is silenced, and it has, again, hasn't silenced both sides. The other side is talking about hate. They're talking about their grief and so forth and so on. But I think what's interesting, Paul, is a report from CNN. Now, it hasn't been talked about that this guy is a mental patient. Has it been talked about much over there in the UK?
No, it's actively being covered up. I mean, there are, Breitbart's reported on it and so forth. But as you said, they've not suspended their campaign. They've become even more vociferous,
yes,
despite the fact that this guy was a mental patient. He had mental problems. He was on psychotropic drugs. They interviewed his friends. They interviewed his neighbors. They interviewed his family members. Listen to these quotes from his brother. Quote, "We are struggling to believe what has happened. My brother is not a violent man and is not that political. We don't even know who he votes for. Yeah. I'm visibly shaken by this news." Here's another one from his half-brother, who is half black, I believe. "He's never expressed any views about Britain or politics or racist tendencies." And yet they're claiming, based on one eyewitness, who is a guy who is in the BNP, which is basically a fascist party, who, he's got the motivation to make this claim for his own agenda, claimed that as this killer was shooting the Labour MP, that he was shouting Britain first. Mm-hmm. They went back and interviewed the other eyewitnesses who said he said no such thing. And in fact, the shopkeeper who's right across from where the murder happened put a huge note up in his window, and this is on my Twitter profile, saying that he did not say Britain first. It was not a political murder. This was a mentally unstable guy, hopped up on psychotropic drugs. Yet what have we seen in the aftermath? Complete, salacious, shameful exploitation by the politicians, by the media. Before this woman, this mother of two, was even dead, you had newspaper headlines saying Brexit killer. I mean, this is completely shameful. We expect nothing less from the mainstream media, but this is so transparent how they're hijacking it. They haven't suspended their campaign. They've become even more vociferous.
You're talking about how transparent it is, Paul. You're talking about how transparent it is. We've got the Southern Poverty Law Center, the usual suspects, who are now coming in and talking about how this guy was a racist. I mean, that raises all kinds of red flags when you combine that with what you just talked about in terms of interviewing people there. Neighbors, here's another quote. This is from CNN even. And CNN puts out the narrative that he's a lone killer, that there's a racist connection with it. Southern Poverty Law Center said they've got documents showing that he has a history of purchasing hate literature from the United States. I mean, these are the people who are always there to create this narrative of right-wing extremism, the Southern Poverty Law Center. But listen to what the neighbors who knew him said. This is Diana Peters, a 65-year-old neighbor, said there was nothing to indicate this could happen. Exactly what you were just saying, Paul. She says it's a total surprise he was even capable of thought, let alone action. Okay, said another longtime neighbor. Another one says, yeah, he was just the ideal neighbor, helpful when you wanted it, kept to himself. She said that he taught English to foreigners. You mentioned he had a half-black brother, Paul. He taught English to foreigners. Politics never came up in a conversation. We never talked about anything like that, said his neighbor. She said she never saw anyone visiting his home. She said she believed that he visited his mother every Sunday, took her groceries once a week, described him as very meek and mild. He spoke rationally. He did his day-to-day routines. But I thought it was interesting. One of the things that came out was a 6-year-old interview that was published in the paper. They were talking to patients from a mental institute who had been given day jobs, and they were finding them day jobs doing gardening work. And we'll tell you what that says when we come back. We've got to go to break. I'm David Knight, and we got Paul Joseph Watson in the UK. Both of us will be right back, and we'll tell you the real story behind this shooting. This guy looks like a total patsy, like straight out of Being There. If you remember Chance the Gardener, Peter Sellers' character. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight here in Austin. We have Paul Joseph Watson with us for one more segment from the UK. And we have Alex Jones is going to be joining us with a special report in the next, when we come back after break in the next segment. Of course, NATO, and this is what Alex is going to be talking about, NATO just came out and said that if there was a cyber hack against one of its countries